Welcome, warriors. Today's guest is a lady I've chatted with for almost a year now, as we're in the same podcasting group. When I saw the theme of her podcast and her cover art, I knew we'd be friends. Grab a tissue and both laugh and cry as she shares what she learned as she walked through a situation that seemingly should have sidelined her. Let's rock. Does your past haunt you? Maybe you're in a storm that feels like it will never end. Are you fighting a battle that's rendering you hopeless? Maybe you feel like you're fighting alone, but your battle was not meant to be a solo endeavor. You were meant to be a warrior among warriors. My name is Heather, and I grew up thinking my battles were nobody's business until I found myself in an abusive marriage and felt cut off from all avenues of help. In this podcast, you will hear warriors' words. They will tell you of their battles, both won and lost, their journeys, and their lessons learned along the way. But we don't stop there. These warriors will share how they have applied those lessons to go from warrior to survivor to thriver. Whether it's an abusive marriage, illness, mental health crisis, or any number of traumas this world dishes out, these warriors will use their words to help you find the beauty in your broken, move beyond your battles, and become the thriver God created you to be. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome back to the Warrior Words podcast. On Mother's Day, 2009, Kerri Bishop's husband suddenly announced he was leaving for a woman he reconnected with on social media. He moved out 1 week later. Kerri was 5 months pregnant with her fifth little boy at the time. The next few years brought trauma, hardship, fear, and doubt to Kerri and her boys. But they also gave her a newfound sense of adventure, confidence, and a connection to God she could not have imagined possible before. Today, Kerri is an author, speaker, and women's mindset and motivation coach. She uses experience, training, and God's grace to help women rise to their challenges. And she brings direction, purpose, laughter, and God's love to women and families worldwide. Kerri's experience from abuse and abandonment to crisis pregnancy and raising 5 boys alone is proof that God's plans are always better than our own. So before we hear this incredible story from Kerri, here's a review from Great Decluttering Guide. Hope. What a great podcast to provide hope after surviving trauma. Thank you. Hope is a great word. I once heard someone say that hope is not a strategy. And while it's not a concrete action, having hope helps you move forward instead of staying stuck. So thank you for recognizing the hope offered in this podcast. And it is my hope that it helps people take a step forward. Would you like me to read your review on an upcoming episode of the podcast? Please go to Apple Podcasts to leave a review for the show. Your comments and your star ratings help other people find the Warrior Words podcast, and it really only takes a few minutes of your time. Come join the Warrior Words Facebook community for inspirational stories, lessons learned, and beauty bombs. Just go to facebook.com/groups/Warrior Words. Request to join. Then a few questions will pop up after hitting that request button. Please answer those, and I look forward to getting to know you there. Now, on to the show. Hi, everyone. As you heard in the intro, we are blessed to have Kerri Bishop here with us this morning, or today, whenever you are listening. Welcome to the Warrior Words podcast, Kerri.
Thank you, Heather. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, I am thrilled that we were able to finally coordinate our schedules. One of the things I said in my intro is that you and I have been talking for almost a year now, or we've known of each other for almost a year because I'm coming up on my 1 year podcast anniversary.
That's awesome. Well, we'll have to
So
do something to celebrate that.
excellent. Yeah, I'm so glad we were able to work our schedules out. So the way we met was through a Facebook group, a podcasting Facebook group, and your podcast is Single Mom Smiling. And I knew, I just knew with that title that I would have to get to know you a little bit better. And um, so let's talk about that today. You are a single mom, and you do smile. You've learned how to smile. So if you could share with us a little bit about maybe your single mom experience.
Yeah, so it's always hard to know exactly where to start your story. Like it's tough. I look back and I
Mhm,
think, oh, should I start it from the day my husband left? But then I think about, past trauma that I had been through even before meeting him. And I think our stories go back even farther than we ever see them. And, even looking back, my parents' story and my grandparents' story, it all kind
mhm,
of comes into play with all of us. So it's hard to know exactly where to start. I guess I would start my story on the day my husband left, just because we needed a jumping off point. But I feel
there you
like there's
go.
so much more that comes before that also.
Mhm,
It's easy to point to one thing and say that's the story, but when you dig deeper, there's always scars and things that go along before that also.
right.
But I would say May 10th, Mother's Day of 2009 was like the dividing point of my life. It was a before and after moment.
Mhm,
That was the day my husband told me he was leaving. So if you don't know my story, I guess I should start by saying I'm a single mom of 5 boys, 5 young
5.
men now. Amazing, incredible, the best kids ever. They're really they're the light of my life, every one of them. But we had some challenges. So we had, let's see, I had a job, had a baby, had another job, had another baby, had another job, had another baby. And I had 4 kids in 6 years, basically, and thought we were done having children.
Mhm,
6 years later, God decided to surprise us with a little blessing that was totally a surprise and wonderful. I always say, some children are planned by their parents and some children are planned solely by God. Now, I
oh,
believe
that's
God plans every child, but
yeah.
the children that are not like, you know, planned so carefully by their parents are just
Mhm,
so special. When God gives you the baby that's unexpected, it's
mhm.
just incredible. So he gave me one of those. I got pregnant in 2008. And within just a few weeks of being pregnant, I got extremely sick. I
Mm,
was on a home IV. I ended up with a PICC line. I had hyperemesis gravidarum, where we had concerns about the baby's health and, possible long-term sicknesses and mental illnesses and things like that with the baby, physical problems. And it was a really challenging pregnancy, to say the least. Uh, when my husband and I renewed our vows on Valentine's Day of 2009, it was a mass ceremony. So it wasn't like the two of us did this together, but we stood up in front of everybody at church. Went to church every Sunday, stood
mhm,
up in front of everybody at church and exchanged our vows with a bunch of other people. Valentine's Day, I forget whether it was a Saturday or Sunday, but we were at mass that day
mhm.
and couples were invited up. Uh, about the same time, a couple weeks before that, he had started seeing a woman. Um, and I did not know about her. So, you know, again, I was very sick with the pregnancy and watching 4 other kids that were young, 4 other
Yeah,
boys, active, rambunctious boys.
as
And
as boys tend to be.
as boys should be. I think I don't want to beat that masculinity out of them. I love that they're anxious and, rambunctious and whatever. And
Mhm.
totally different world from what I understand. Like I'm like, I want the girl thing and I want, whatever. But I love my boys and the activity in their household. So basically, time passed. We got to Mother's Day. One of my kids got injured the day before Mother's Day, and my husband hadn't come home. He had spent the night in New York City with his other woman, I guess. And Mother's Day, he did come home. I guess that was Friday night. Saturday, he came home. But when my son had gotten injured, we had to go to the hospital. And, they pulled the IV because I had a reaction to some of the medication. And they weren't sure if the medication was now causing more problems than the IV. So it was kind of like, we're going to try and pull it and see how you do.
Mhm,
Um, but I was still very sick, still not feeling well, 4 little boys and now 5 months pregnant. My husband didn't come home that night, and the next day he came home, and then the next day was Mother's Day. we went out to eat and everything. And on Mother's Day, after we put the kids to bed, I just said, I know you're working really hard. I love you. I appreciate everything you're doing, but I really need you to be home. If something happens, like one of our kids goes to the hospital or something, I just need you here sometimes. And at that point, he jumped up and said, actually, you can't count on me for, I said, I need to count on you for something. And he jumped up and said, you can't count on me for anything anymore. I want out. And a week later, he moved out. Now I'm glossing over a lot of things. There's a lot of buildup. Like I said, there's a lot of before and after. And, we had a lot of serious ups and downs in our marriage, some really great times, some really horrible times.
Mhm.
That year had been like the best year we'd had. And he even said that, he saw me more as a friend than as a wife at that point, which
Oh,
was
wow.
completely confusing to me because I'm like, well, I'm also pregnant and I'm not getting knocked up by all my friends, like this is this is not a friendship
Yeah.
relationship. Like, Heather, we're friends. I'm not getting pregnant by you.
Well, that's good.
That's good. We do have to draw a line somewhere. Um, so it was a really confusing thing. Like, what do you mean we're going to be better friends? Like, I don't understand this whole concept.
Mhm.
That summer was really hard. We'd actually had plans to go away. In New York State, we had the fourth grade curriculum was New York State history, fifth grade was US history. And by the way, my first four kids were spaced. Every year would have had somebody in fourth or fifth grade. So in fourth grade, the first year, my oldest son planned a trip to Lake Placid, and he
Mhm.
had to map it and graph and budget it and do everything for that. The second year, he did Mount Rushmore, and we camped our way out to Mount Rushmore.
Oh, fun.
It was awesome. And so he did the whole thing with Mount Rushmore. My second son was a tour guide. Like, they each had a ticket they had to get to get on this trip with us, something they had to do. They had to earn their way for this trip. So my second son was like a tour guide. He researched the Badlands and he was our tour guide for the Badlands. And my little ones just did like state license plate games and things like that. So the third year, my second son was in fourth grade. He did Cooperstown and Baseball Hall of Fame. And then he had the trip planned to Crater Lake in Oregon. And we were going to drive across the country and camp in a tent our way out to Oregon and back, just like his older brother had done to Mount Rushmore. And that trip completely fell apart on him. And it was heartbreaking. We had planned this. I mean, he was so excited to plan this great trip, and it was suddenly not there. So trying to like pick them up and show that we could still do something. We started camping. I took the kids when I was 8 months pregnant. My mother was furious with me. But when I was 8 months pregnant, I took my boys to Niagara Falls. I said, I can't get you to Oregon, but we're going to still be a family and we're going to camp in a tent out in Niagara Falls. And we actually survived a tornado touching down less than a mile away from the campground. So I
Oh,
have four.
wow.
I'm 8 months pregnant.
Oh,
And
my
we
goodness.
in a tent, and it was incredible. It was a really strengthening experience, and it helped me, understand that, what, we have to challenge ourselves. We can't sit back and think about poor me and, how hard my life is, because life is really stinking hard sometimes.
Yeah.
So my husband, I had the baby, and my husband texted me 3 days later and said, just to let you know, I filed for a divorce today. And so I have a 3-day-old baby. It's a day I got out of the hospital. And now I'm dealing with trying to, like, what do I do? The baby ended up being the baby. He's 15 now. He'd be like, I'm not a baby, mom.
No.
Yeah, no, he's an amazing athlete. He is a great kid. He is so wonderful. He's the light of our lives. There's no, he could get better grades, but there's no, oh, I'm in so much trouble for that. He's a great kid. There's none of the concerns that we thought were going to happen with him happened. So God has been really good to us.
Really good. Yes.
But it was really hard. And I really thought my husband would come back when he saw that the baby was healthy and was good. And God has other plans, and I guess so does my husband. So that's
Yes.
in a nutshell
Yeah.
how we got there anyway.
Yeah. And it's interesting though, you said God has other plans, and so did my husband, and God gives us that free will, and allows us to make those other plans and those other decisions, and we can't control those as much as we would want to sometimes.
You know what? I remember thinking, like, there are certain episodes that just stand out in your mind. Like, they're like snapshots that are so crystal clear about how things happen.
Right.
I remember being online, or another couple being online at the grocery store. They were waiting at the deli counter, and I was kind of like, just pushing my cart through in like shell shock mode. And I watched this old woman berate her husband completely in front of everybody. And I remember seeing the husband just grip the shopping cart and put his head down and kind of take it. And I remember thinking, like, God, I would never do that to my husband, especially out in public. Like, I'm not perfect. I certainly made mistakes. I did things that were
Right.
wrong, I did things that were hurtful. I, can go back and look at all things I wish I could have done differently or done again. But I never would have done that to him. And they're still together. Like, why, God? Why is this happening? Like, I
Mm.
don't understand this. Um, I'm really glad you brought up free will, though, because I'm not sure what I've thought about it. But one of the best things that came out of this was my understanding of God and free will, because I begged God, God, please bring my husband back. Like, please, I want this marriage. I'm going to get choked up now, too. Like, I want this marriage to work out. Like, I love this man. I love my family. I want what's best for my kids. I don't believe divorce is good for children. What do I do with this? And it gave me such an understanding because I heard God tell me, like, free will or loving is a gift. It's a gift of free will. You can't force somebody to love because that's not love anymore.
Right.
Do you really want me to change his heart for you? Do you really want me to force him to love you? Because that's not going to
Right.
be real love. And it's the same way we have to love God. Like, God could force us to love him, but I have to make the decision. And it was really like, oh, I'm going to make the decision either to love God more and to love my family
Mhm.
more, or to
Right.
divorce them, because I have reason. Like, if you look, I can be like, yeah, you know what? I have reason to leave God. Like, God has been, if I look at it, like, it's tragic what's happened here.
Mhm.
Um, and I have, you know, imperfectly, but I have tried to live out my marital vows and things, and it's
Right.
just not working. So, what are you doing, God? And it was just such an understanding of what a gift unconditional love is, and what a gift free will is. Because in especially my weaker moments, I'm a little bit stronger now and I understand things a little bit more now. But if you had asked me, do you want me to force him to love you? I would have been like, heck yeah. Like, yes, force him to love me. What is wrong with you? Of course I want him to love me. I don't care how it comes. And now
Yeah.
with a little bit of maturity and a little bit of understanding and a little bit of looking back at things, I'm able to say, like, actually, I really want to be loved because somebody chooses to love me. And that
Right.
means I also have to choose to love somebody else. That gift of free will is like, whew, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a gift.
Yeah. I think it is. It's something that's very difficult to understand. Um, but once we get that maturity and even I think some of the hindsight, then
Yeah.
it makes it a little bit easier to understand. But I think we go through these episodes like you mentioned, and each time we have to remember, oh, free will. It's
Yeah.
not you know you don't just learn that lesson once, I think.
No, it is a constant like reminder of, oh, let go, detach. Prayer for detachment is one of my biggest things. Like, okay, God, I have to detach, not just from my ex and the life I thought we should
Mhm.
have together,
Yeah.
but I have to detach from my children too and let them make their own choices. And that's even harder for me in some ways than letting my husband go, because these children are so precious to me. And I've spent so much of my time wanting to be with them. I never wanted this split parenting thing like he did. He was okay doing, like, it's Samson and the baby, like, I'm okay splitting the baby in half.
Yeah.
I was like, no, like, no, don't split these children. I want this time with them. Like, I deserve this time. And God's like, no, detach. They're here for a reason, and we have to believe that.
Yeah.
You know, each of us
Yep.
is placed here for a certain time in this place, and it's up to them now to make those decisions.
Yeah, I
Really
think
decide
yeah.
on what we want.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm now the parent of two young adults, and sometimes you watch their decisions and you say, okay, I would have done that differently. But you're
Yeah.
coming, right now, you're coming at a place of, okay, so for me, I'm in my mid 50s now. And so I can look back with that hindsight, but they're in their early 20s and they have to make those decisions and they have to learn for themselves. Um, and I think that, when they exercise that free will, that they learn and they grow. and then they make better decisions the next time, hopefully.
Yeah.
So, but no, this is not an episode about my children's decisions, because for the most part, they do make pretty good ones, and I'm very proud of them, and I love them, and I love hearing your love for your boys, and it's motherhood is such a gift. It's a struggle, it's a gift, it's a blessing, it's all the things wrapped up into one. So
It sure is. I mean, the laughter that my kids have brought, it's as hard as everything was, it's been such a great, like, it's taught us to laugh even in hard times.
yes.
There was one right after my husband left, my youngest son was in kindergarten still. And I was losing my mind, honestly. I was so shell shocked and so like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And his leaving also brought up past trauma from my childhood and other things. So it was like a compound of like everything piling in on me, and it's such feeling of worthlessness and everything. Um, but at one point I made my kids sandwiches and, given them their sandwiches and put them in their backpacks and sent them off to school. And I went to pick up my son and I couldn't find my phone anywhere. So I called. We still had a house phone at that time. I don't have a house phone anymore, but in those days I still had a house phone. So I called my cell phone over and over and over and over, and I couldn't find it. And what happened was I finally ended up saying, all right, I got to go pick my kids up from school. I went to go grab my keys out of my purse, and I realized I put my son's snack in my purse and put my cell phone in his backpack. So not only that, but his kindergarten teacher sent home a message, and I loved his kindergarten teacher, and everything was amazing with her, but she sent home a message saying, I really appreciate that Ryan has the cell phone, but please don't send it to him with him anymore. And the ringtone had been recorded by my oldest son, who sang, Grandma got run over by a beer truck, in his 11-year-old voice. So my 11-year-old had the ringtone, and it was funny for me, but not so great for a kindergarten classroom, probably. So we ended up laughing about, we were able to find humor in some of the, like, you can take that either way. And we thought that was hysterical. So there were times that really pulled us together that I think is special, especially among boys. Like being a mom of boys is like something else. It's crazy.
Well, my aunt has 3 boys, and there's a plaque. I think the last time I was at her house, because we live in different states, but the last time I was at her house, she had a plaque that says there's a special place in heaven for the mom of boys. Or I think it actually specifically says 3 boys, but I think that would apply to a mom of 5 boys as well.
The sheer smell of our house sometimes after a baseball game or a football game, something like, yeah. I mean, not so much the house maybe, but driving home in the car where it's a tight enclosed space and we're like, oh, you guys stink.
Yes. Yeah, and 2 of her 3 boys were very involved in sports as well. So
okay. Yeah.
probably.
Yeah. Yeah. All 5 of mine are athletes. So it can be a little, it can be potent some days here.
Oh my goodness. So you mentioned you mentioned a few things that I kind of wanted to talk, and I don't want to throw them all at you at once. So but you mentioned that as you were going through the early part of being a single mom, that it brought up trauma from the past. And you don't need to share, details, but if you could maybe in general terms share with us, like, one, how it brings up that trauma, and then maybe how you can now see how your earlier traumas played into, I guess, helping is not the right word, but getting you to this new trauma.
As far as how they come up, I'm not completely sure I have a great answer for that. I think that it's natural to revisit trauma when something traumatic happens to you.
Right.
A more concrete example, sometimes it's easier to understand the physical than it is to understand mental and emotional, spiritual wounds. That's the way I see it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So to add to my crazy life, what is it, 6 years ago? I'd have to think back about how many years, but about 6 years ago, I was run over by a school bus also. I don't think I even told you that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was a speeding, texting school bus driver, and I was walking across my school parking lot. and he took a turn where he wasn't supposed to be and ran me over right between the headlights. Um, and I was taken out by ambulance. I couldn't move, couldn't walk. At that point, you know what, Heather, it's so amazing because at that point I had dug into my faith and dug into forgiveness. I was able to forgive him on the spot and pray for him in that parking lot.
Wow.
I prayed the rosary on the way to the hospital in the back of the ambulance, in part for him and his job, because he kept saying, "I'm going to lose my job over this. I'm going to lose my job over this." I'm like, I thought I was going to lose my life over this, but I know your job
Yeah.
is important.
Perspective.
Right. But some of the impact from that, like the physical part, I could understand the pain. I have nerve damage and some things going on. But because it was a physical accident, I also had, I guess, I mean, not because it was a physical accident, but I also had some emotional wounds to deal with from that.
Yeah.
So especially even now, when I come up to an intersection, if there's headlights that come at me from the right side, I can go into like a flashback mode.
Okay. Yeah.
For a long time after the accident, I would have flashbacks that were really intense. It could be anything. If the boys threw a ball to my right side, I would jump into a flashback. I could be sitting in church and praying and all of a sudden see a bus come at me from the right side and just like flinch and like cry and just not understand what's going on. And I think that trauma, it kind of helps me see like there's stuff that we need to deal with that is so intense that it's beyond our comprehension. I know one of the things that helped me through this whole thing was the understanding of the verse, which I hadn't understood before, and I don't remember the name of the verse, but I'm so bad with this. Only the groans of the Holy Spirit will suffice. I'd have to
Yeah.
look up what verse that is. But it made me understand like, whoa, there's stuff here that we're dealing with that we're not going to understand this side of heaven, that there's stuff that is so weighing on my heart and my mind and my soul that it needs to be revisited. It needs to be dug deeper. Things that happen in childhood that I couldn't process as a child, I can now, because of this trauma, I can look at it and go, okay, I don't like this. I'm not really thrilled to be going back there, but with a little maturity. And I don't mean that maturity like age wise. I mean it like a spiritual maturity,
Right.
looking back and saying, okay, God, I'm going to be mature enough to know that I don't have the answers to this and I have to let go of control. And because of that, I can see you helping me through this. So I think that there's some of that in there too. And that I think we bring those things back up because it's undealt with pain. And I think it just united the foot of the cross. Like if I were like, oh, you know what, I'm done with that. That trauma's over. I'm ready for the next stage, like you kind of think the power is within you. And I think that's a huge weakness. I think so many people think the power is within them. And I think there's a balance. Like we have to work with God. God won't force himself. God is not an abusive ex, or an abusive lover. He's not going to force himself on you. He waits and says, okay, when you're ready, my door is open, but you've got to be the one to walk through it. And I think so much in my previous life, it was me trying to, either hold that door shut and not let anybody in, or pretend that door didn't exist or whatever. And when I had this new trauma, now it's like, okay, how do I mesh this all together and see it as one giant story where it's helping me to overcome what I'm experiencing now. And I also think that we can't just look at ourselves. Like my experience of what am I dealing with now has to help other people too. Like it's not up to me. It's not just my story. All our stories are so connected.
Yeah.
I know you're a teacher. I was an elementary school teacher. I teach high school math now, but I was an elementary school teacher. And we did those activities where, if you pull on one string of the ecosystem and you think you're just going to kill a mosquito, then that mosquito has a bird and that bird has a snake and that snake has a,
Yeah.
And I think that's really what's happening with us, both internally within ourselves, but also on a bigger level with humanity. And by revisiting that, by seeing what happened in the past, it helps us be more empathetic and more compassionate, and also hold people's feet to the fire, because sometimes you just need to be told, like, get up and do something. And
Oh, yes.
Like it's a balance. Like sometimes you got to be compassionate and graceful, give people grace, and sometimes it's like, no, get up and rely on discipline over motivation. Like you've got to go up and do something, get outside every day, go talk to strangers, be grateful for everything, even the hardship. It's a matter of gratitude.
Yes.
I actually it's called the Deliberate Discomfort Challenge, which was led by Green Berets and a Navy SEAL and things. And they talked about minds. It was deliberately uncomfortable. It was a lot of discomfortableness. But those guys taught us amazing lessons. And I don't think I would be in a group like that if I hadn't been so challenged from everything else I had been through. You know, the people in that group, a lot of them had been through some hard stuff. You know,
Mhm.
the guys in combat obviously have
Yeah.
incredible stories, incredible, you know, resilience, but they also break down. And it was interesting to see these big, tough guys, you know, admit that, hey, I need help. And it kind of gave me permission to be like, hey, I need help sometimes. And I hope that that's what I project to other people. Like, you know what? We're not meant to do this life alone. We're meant to help each other and use our stories to help one another.
Well, I usually ask people for lessons learned, and you just gave us some great ones. Then another thing that I like to ask all of my guests about is finding beauty in the broken. And that to me can mean one of two things. It can mean like maybe you saw some beauty actually in the mess as you were going through it, or looking back, because we've talked a bit about looking back. Maybe now you can see how maybe God turned that mess into something beautiful. And um, and I love the fact that your podcast is titled Single Mom Smiling. And we've talked an awful lot about struggles and trauma. And so the smiling and the beauty seem to go hand in hand. Is there a connection there? Or can you find some beauty in your struggles?
You know what? That's a really interesting question. I have to admit that it is much harder to find the beauty in the midst of those struggles. A
Hmm.
lot of times
Yeah.
it's coming back and saying, okay, how have I changed? How has God led me in a different direction from anything I would have thought I would do? I never would have seen myself as a math teacher. In fact, I'm thinking about some math teachers that are like, no, just no. Teaching math now, you couldn't even spell math, never mind like move the variables around. Um, so, you know, I look back and I can see the beauty better through that. But one thing I will say is that really early on in this whole like adventure, for lack of a better word,
That's a good
trauma,
word.
like, you know, we don't have problems, we have challenges. We don't, you know, it's an adventure, it's all whatever. But being conscious and making decisions that are going to make your life better and help you see that beauty, I think is so important. So when I was trying to figure out, you know, one of my questions was, who am I now? Like, I've been fired as wife and full-time mother. I had
Mhm.
been a stay-at-home mom, and I'd just been made part-time youth minister of my church. So much of my identity was built around being the best wife and mother I could be. And again, I made a lot of mistakes with the wife part and the
Mhm.
parenting part too. I will certainly tell you that.
Yeah.
But you know, that's where my heart was. I just wanted to be a wife and a mother and love my family. And when that was taken away from me, when that option was swept out from under me with no recourse for me to do anything about it, it kind of really made me question my identity. And then we had the annulment process, and that's a whole nother story, but I strongly disagreed with some of the things that happened with the annulment process also. And, you know, receiving that annulment letter in my maiden name. And I thought, wait a minute, you're supposed to be defending my faith. What, you know, you're supposed to be defending my marriage. How are you in my initial letter treating me with my unmarried name? I don't understand this. And it was such a question of who am I now? Do I keep my married name? Do I keep my maiden name? Do I pick a different name out of a box altogether because I'm not the person I was when I was, you know, young and semi-innocent before I got married, but
Right.
I'm not my married person either. It was such an identity crisis. And I thought back to my grandmother who had been through some really hard times also. And you know what? She always just had a smile. Like she was the woman that we all cringed over because her laugh was so loud. And we're just like, oh my gosh, grandma, you're so embarrassing. Like, don't, you know, but she was amazing. And she just, you know, loved everything. And um, I put, what did I put? I put smiling into Google Translate and I said in German, what is smiling? Because my grandmother was German and it kicked back the name Stralen. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be Strailing Grace was something that I had like another website that I had and something that I was like, okay, God, if you want me to be smiling, if you want me to be this Stralen woman, you know, then you have to help me. But it was such a decision of, I have somebody I can look at as a role model. You know, she's not with me anymore. She hasn't been in my life for years, but I do remember I have this memory of her that just is incredible. And she's such a beautiful, amazing woman. And my grandfather was such a strong, powerful influence too. I remember him praying the rosary and doing things that were just, you know, incredible. And that's the kind of person I want to be. I want to be that person that's choosing to be smiling. And I see so much of that with a choice. Like it is a conscious decision. We don't let life happen to us. We have to decide, you know what, I'm going to do what makes me happy. Um, a couple of years ago, this is kind of getting off a little bit on tangent too, but a couple of years ago, I went through a period where I was just like, I'm a nobody, I'm a this, I'm that. Life goes in cycles where I have good moments and then
Yeah.
like something happens again. And then it's like, okay, pick yourself out, go back to the cross, at the foot of the cross. And I gone through this time where I was like, well, what am I doing here? Like, is there anything good in my life? And it was 2021. So it was like the defund the police and it was, post COVID, but still New York was in lockdown and things were crazy. And I decided,
Yeah.
you know what, I'm going to hop in my minivan. My kids were with their dad for a couple of weeks. And I was like, instead of sitting home and feeling bad for myself or cleaning out my cabinets, which I probably should have done also, I hopped in my minivan and was like, I'm going to drive across the country and start talking about what's good about America. Because there was so much negativity. We can't, we can't we can't talk about our differences and the problems until we have a solid base of good and gratitude and forgiveness and mercy and just an appreciation for the beauty, like the natural beauty that God gives us and the people in our country and all the, the diverse points of view and everything. There's a solid ground of good here. And all we're doing is talking about the bad.
Right.
And I hopped in my minivan. I slept in the back of the minivan. I got a cot. I, stayed at campgrounds or state parks and a couple Walmart parking lots and whatever weird things that nobody else would do. But I stopped and talked to people and said, I'm going to record you. What do you love about America? And I found so many people had such a hard time talking about what was good. And they were like, well, I love America, but I can tell you about these 3 bad things. And I was like, no, no, no. Before we talk about the bad, we have to talk about the good. And it was really eye-opening for me. And it really made people think I have all these recordings. I have to figure out what to do with them exactly. But I have these recordings of people all over the country of all different nationalities and everything saying, oh, you know what? Here's something good about America I hadn't thought of. Let me tell you about this. And it was really neat. They're like 3 to 5 minute videos, but they're incredible of like, this is what's good about our country. And I think that's such a conscious decision for me too. Like if I'm going to find beauty in the broken, I have to look and say, yes, there's all this bad stuff, but before I can even dig into the bad stuff, I have to find an appreciation for what is good here. And I have to recognize that there is good. So I think that's my biggest, like we are powerful. There is a conscious decision that we make of whether we're going to find good or find bad. And I think it builds on itself. So when we find bad, that we tend to see more bad, but when we find good, we tend to find more good. And I do think we're powerful in that. Like God has given us a gift to search out, the good.
Yeah. And the word there's a word that has popped up in my mind a couple times that you've been talking over the course of this chat, and that is lens. And it came to me first when you were talking about maturity, and then it just came to me there when you were talking about looking for the good. You have to look for the good first before you start discussing the bad. And it's the lens, how we view things, how we look at things, and we can choose, just like on a camera, well, on the old-fashioned cameras, we can choose which lens to put on and how we view things. And I think that's important. It's important to look at what is good before we start the trashing and the looking at what's bad. So no, that is beautiful.
And I
Go ahead.
that thing. I think there's so many people that think it's like rose-colored glasses or, being an ostrich and burying your head in the sand. And that's not it at all. It's a recognition. It's like a conscious recognition that I'm not hiding from the bad, but I so much more appreciation and more gratitude and more attention spent on what's good. And then we can start looking at the bad. Like it's not rose-colored glasses. It's not digging your head in the sand or ignoring problems. It's just like, hey, we really need to appreciate the good. And yeah, putting those lenses on is really important.
Yeah.
Thanks. I like
it. Well, I think, it's perspective, and it's coming from a different direction. I think if you come from the direction of the bad, it's almost impossible to see the good. Right. But if you come from the direction of the good, then you can look at the bad with a better perspective. You can accept it. And you're right, it's not rose-colored glasses. It's looking at it through the right lens. So.
And I
So,
worry about a lot of that with the coming from the bad or coming from the good, because with the way social media and things like play into what we're going through. Like I work with a girl who's been through some real significant trauma, the most trauma I've ever seen. And she gets caught up in TikTok videos of
mm,
negativity and how my life is. So, you've got to turn off that negative and not come from the bad. And it's such a skill and such like a new muscle to a lot of people.
mhm,
And we're played into what we already believe in. Like it's just, that cycle of bad is so um it's so attractive to some people. It just
yeah,
pulls them back, takes such effort. And I really believe it's supreme, like the supreme being, God, is the one that has to pull us out of that. And it's a surrender, and it's an unlocking of that little piece in our childhood that we're trying so hard to protect. And we need to empty ourselves out and be vulnerable in front of God and say, okay, this is beyond me. This is heavier than anything I can lift. This is bigger and worse than anything I ever thought I would deal with. And because of that, I'm going to help you. I'm going to lay it at your feet and let you help me see the good in it. So it's a real surrender. And that's really hard. That surrender is hard when it feels like you have so little to hold on to.
yeah. It's scary. It is scary. Oh, well, we've talked about some lessons and we've talked about some beauty. Um, do you have any specific advice that you would offer any of our listeners, whether they're going through a divorce or whether they are parenting as a single parent? Um, just anything that you would like to say from your own experience to offer to them.
Oh gosh, there's so much. I think relying on discipline is one thing. Like, don't wait to feel like you feel better. It's like get up and makes yourself feel better, do something. And I know that's hard for a lot of people in depression and things like that. But I don't always feel like going out for a walk or a run or something. But if I make myself do it, I usually feel better after. Same
Yeah.
thing with working out, lifting weights. You know, I I'm not loving lifting weights, but it makes
No.
me feel stronger after I do it. Like I never get up and be like, oh, I can't wait to work out today. I always gosh. But after I'm done, I'm always glad. Um, I think also just processing, writing every single day, writing a journal and just keeping track of what are my thoughts today. Get it out on paper, because I know when I'm in the midst of that trauma and when things are so bad, and trust me, there are times where life is so incredibly bad, it just is more than we can handle. But the process of getting it out on paper and just seeing it in front of you helps you take a little bit of
Mhm.
ownership of it and pass it off to God and let him deal with it, as opposed to that just jumble of mess that's in our heads. So I would say those are the two things. And you know what? As far as single parenting goes, the thing that I think helped me the most, my oldest son had just finished sixth grade CCD, and he said to me, Mom, read the book of Job. Like our lives are going to be better. God is going to hold on to us. He's going to rebuild us. I don't know how. I don't see this, but that's coming from an 11-year-old boy. And
Wow.
as a Catholic, we do a lot of mass, we do a lot of amazing things, but I hadn't dug into the Bible reading. And when he said that, I was like, all right. And I read Job and I was like, oh, actually, there's something to this Bible here, like let's do. And as a single mom, even spending 15 minutes, I'd wake up 15 minutes before my kids and have coffee with Jesus every morning. And I would just sit with a journal and I'd read not even a entire chapter, but one small thing. Just open up the Bible and say, okay, God, what do you want to show me today? And I'd open it up, and almost all the time I'd find something. I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. And I would
Yeah.
take that about it. So it's 15 minutes, but just to start your day, with surrender to God, and just know that there's a book out there that really is an instruction manual that says, hey,
Yeah.
and Bible stories, the families in the Bible are so crazy broken. It's not
Yes.
just, "Okay, that's a mess." God's got a plan and he works with our mess. So I think those are the things that I would say, just dig in. And there's so much, Heather, that I would say about my faith and, the goodness that the end to lukewarmness that this has brought for me. And I think that's the number one thing that I've gotten from all this is the understanding of free will. The number one thing, I'm going to give you 5 things now.
It's okay. It's all good.
The understanding of free will, the gift of unconditional love, and what a superpower that is to give to a husband or to a child, or to anyone else. An end to lukewarmness, and just like, you know what, we have to stop being lukewarm in our faith and in our relationships, and even in our pushing of ourselves and our gentleness to ourselves, like an end to lukewarmness, and the grace of total forgiveness. So,
Beautiful.
but that's it, I think.
It is all good stuff. Very good. Thank you very, very much. So we've mentioned the podcast multiple times. Um, I'm assuming you're on all the major players. People can come find you on Apple and Spotify and
Yes, I am definitely Single Mom Smiling on all the podcast platforms, I guess.
Mhm.
I have a Facebook page. I have Single Mom Smiling on Facebook. I have a Catholic Single Moms group. I also have a private coaching group, so I can send you the link to that also. Yeah, and that's good. I'm not great at I try to, limit some of my social media. I keep saying I want to get on X and I want to get on Gab and I want to get on Instagram. But honestly, I have a family and,
Yeah.
has to know is we have to have boundaries and, family and faith come first and social media.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So, well, whatever links you would like to share with the listeners, I'll make sure to get those in the show notes and encourage everyone to listen to your podcast because I've listened to several episodes that I would say, that topic doesn't apply to me. But I always get into the episodes because I'm a completionist. It's one of my own, it's one of my own faults that maybe I have to deal with. But I listen to every episode, whether the topic is applicable to my current life, and I always hear something from you, whether it's the Bible verse that you chose or whether it's a story you shared. There's always something that I can learn from, and so I would encourage people to listen to your podcast, whether they're in that season with 5 boys or whether they're newly single or single for decades. I think that there's something that can be gleaned, and so I appreciate your episodes. I appreciate your no longer being lukewarm in your faith.
Yeah,
I love how
yeah.
bold your episodes are. So,
Thank you.
and
God is
with
good.
yes, he is all the time.
Yeah.
So, with that, I will thank you for sharing your time, and sharing your wisdom and your lessons learned. And I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. I love what you're doing out here and, really helping single moms. I've shared your episodes in my group too. So
Oh,
I,
thank you. Thank
yeah,
you. All
network
right.
together.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you once again for sharing your time with us.
Thank you, Heather.
This was a very powerful episode for me. One I feel was truly brought together by God. After adding the intro and this concluding section, this episode will likely be just shy of an hour. But Kerri and I were blessed to have a longer block of time to connect and chat, both before I hit record and after. We discovered that we had more in common than we originally thought, and I enjoyed every minute of it. So, in thinking about our conversation as a whole, I think it boils down to two main ideas: free will and the lenses we use. Kerri and I discussed how God gives us the gift of free will. And we even agreed that in some situations, we just don't see it as a gift. In some of those situations, we may want God to take another person's free will away from them to accomplish what we want. And in the case of our marriages, that seems to make sense from our human perspective. Makes sense to want our marriages to work out. Dare I say, to have them be happy and fulfilling. It makes sense also to want our kids to have both a mother and father in the home, lovingly teaching them to be amazing adults. But the world doesn't work that way, and neither does God. And like Kerri said, she realized that asking God to force her former husband to love her and to stay would not have achieved the happy family she thought they should have. God gives us free will as a gift to every single one of us. We are blessed to be able to make our own decisions. And sometimes we make the right ones, and sometimes we get it wrong. And if that's true for us, then it has to be true for all the other people in our lives. The gift doesn't work one way for them and a different way for us. Which leads me to the concept of the lenses we choose to use. We can choose to look at a situation as unfair because someone else has exercised their gift of free will in a way that we just don't like. And maybe it is unfair or even downright wrong or mean. But to take the free will away would be equally unfair. Thankfully, there are other lenses we can choose. Kerri mentioned gratitude and forgiveness. When I talk about finding beauty in the broken, it usually involves being grateful for something, even something in your trauma. Whether it was a moment of peace, a new skill you learned, or any other point of beauty, the lens of gratitude helps us see situations a little more evenly. The lens of forgiveness can help us see others as Christ sees them, or maybe allows us to see Christ in those who hurt us. I know that's hard. Forgiveness is hard, but opening your eyes and using this lens can help you, us, all of us, have compassion on others and brings us full circle to that concept of free will. When we are forgiving and compassionate, we see others exercising the gift of free will, and we can be more grateful for it. So think of a situation in your life right now. With what lens are you choosing to see it? Something to think about this week. So until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words.